close your eyes, take a slow breath, and allow your mind to drift far back in time, back to one of the earliest cradles of human civilization. Before the bustling streets, before the temples and empires, before the stories of kings and conquerors, there was the Indus Valley. Around 3300 BCE, along the fertile plains of the Indus River, people began to settle. They were not nomads any longer. They had learned to cultivate the earth, to sow seeds, and to harvest crops. With the steady rhythm of the river, they built villages, and from villages grew great cities. These were Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, names that still echo across the centuries like whispers of an ancient lullaby. Life in these cities was astonishingly organized. Streets were laid out in straight lines, crossing at right angles, like a carefully designed grid. Houses were made of baked bricks, sturdy and uniform. Each home had access to clean water, and many had private baths. Imagine, thousands of years ago, a society that valued cleanliness, order, and balance. It is almost as if they understood that harmony in daily life was as important as survival itself. The Indus Valley people were traders, artisans, and dreamers. They worked with beads, pottery, and precious stones. They carved small seals with mysterious symbols that we have not yet fully understood. Some show animals like elephants, bulls, and unicorn-like creatures. Others show human figures, perhaps gods, perhaps leaders. What did they mean? Were they prayers, records, or stories? We may never know. And yet, in the mystery, there is peace, like a half-forgotten dream that drifts away when we wake. Their lives were deeply connected to the rhythms of nature. The monsoon rains, the fertile soil, the steady flow of the river, all of these shaped their days. At night, under the wide, starry skies of the subcontinent, perhaps they told each other stories by firelight, just as we listen now to the stories of their world. But like all great civilizations, the Indus Valley faced challenges. Around 1900 BCE, the cities began to decline. Climate change, shifting rivers, and perhaps overuse of resources may have brought hardship. The once thriving streets grew quiet. Slowly, the people moved away. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, once alive with voices and footsteps, became silent ruins. And yet, the spirit of this early civilization did not disappear. The memory of their order, their artistry, and their way of life remained like an echo carried forward into the future. Their foundations would become the soil in which the seeds of Indian culture would continue to grow. As we leave this chapter of history, let us imagine walking through the quiet ruins of Mohenjo-Daro at dusk. The sun sets gently behind the baked brick walls. The wind carries whispers of a people who lived thousands of years ago, who loved, who worked, who dreamed. We pause, take a soft breath, and prepare to step into the next age of India's story. Let us drift further into the river of time. The voices of the Indus Valley have grown quiet, their cities resting in the earth like ancient dreams. And now, new voices rise, soft chants carried on the winds of the north, words woven into hymns, prayers, the Vedic Age, a chapter that begins around 1500 BCE and continues for nearly 1,000 years. The people of this age were the composers of the Vedas, sacred texts that remain central to Indian thought even today. The word Veda means knowledge. Imagine, under the open skies of the early Indian plains, groups of wise men reciting verses to the rhythm of the fire and the drum. These hymns were not written at first. They were sung, remembered, passed down from teacher to student, generation after generation. Like a gentle flame kept alive in darkness, the words survived through memory and devotion. The Vedas tell us about gods and the mysteries of the universe. They speak of Agni, the fire god, carrying prayers upward like smoke, Indra, the thunderbolt-wielding warrior, bringing rain and strength, and Varuna, the guardian of cosmic order, who holds the world together with invisible threads. To the people of the Vedic world, these deities were not distant figures, but living forces, seen in every storm, every sunrise, every river that flowed. Life during this time was mostly pastoral. Families lived in small communities, raising cattle, sheep, and horses. The cow was especially sacred, not for wealth alone, but for survival, nourishment, and ritual. To lose cattle was to lose life itself. Fields of barley and rice began to spread, and slowly, villages grew into small towns. It was also during the Vedic Age that the first outlines of social order began to take shape. The hymns mention the division of society into groups, later known as the Varna system. There were priests who preserved the sacred words, warriors who defended the tribes, farmers and herders who sustained life, and those who served in other ways. At first, this order was fluid, more about role than rigid identity. But over centuries, it hardened into what we now call the caste system, a structure that would influence India's society deeply and for millennia. Yet the Vedic world was not only about division, it was also about discovery. The people observed the skies, tracked the stars, and measured the cycles of the moon. They developed mathematics, rituals, and philosophies that still echo today. If you listen closely, you may hear the soft hum of a chant, Om, a sound that even now carries the resonance of this ancient age. As centuries passed, the Vedic people moved eastward, settling along the Ganges River. The fertile plains allowed larger kingdoms to rise. Life was changing. Instead of small tribal groups, powerful rulers began to appear, each seeking to expand their influence. The stories of these rulers are woven into epic poetry, legends that became the backbone of Indian cultural memory. This was the time when the seeds of the great epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, were planted. Though they would take form much later, their roots lay in the Vedic world. These were not just stories of gods and heroes, but lessons in duty, honor, and the struggles of human life. Imagine families gathered at night, listening to wandering bards recount tales of princes, sages, and battles, while the stars glowed softly overhead. The Vedic age was also the dawn of philosophical reflection. Questions arose. Who are we? What is the soul? what lies beyond life and death. From these quiet yet profound reflections came the Upanishads, texts that explored the deepest mysteries of existence. They spoke of Brahman, the ultimate reality that pervades everything, and Atman, the eternal soul within each being. The wisdom was like a gentle stream, flowing quietly beneath the surface, nourishing India's spiritual soil for ages to come. But alongside philosophy and poetry, there was politics and power. Small kingdoms began to clash. Leaders competed for dominance. Alliances were formed and broken, and the rhythm of history quickened. Yet, even in the struggles of men, the soft hum of the Vedic hymns continued, reminding them of order, of ritual, of the eternal beyond the fleeting. Imagine yourself now, sitting in a clearing by the Ganges thousands of years ago. The night is cool, the fire crackles softly, and the air carries the sound of chants rising toward the stars. A priest pours ghee into the flames, murmuring verses as sparks dance upward. Children drift to sleep, listening to the steady rhythm of prayers, while elders share stories of gods and heroes. Life is simple, but filled with meaning. The Vedic age slowly gave birth to what we call the Mahajanapadas, the 16 great kingdoms that would dominate the next era. Among them were Magadha, Kosala, and Kuru, each growing stronger, each leaving its mark. These kingdoms would eventually become the stage for new philosophies, Buddhism and Jainism, and new political powers. But for now, they were still forming, like clay in the potter's hands. This period is both calm and transitional. It carries the memory of the Indus Valley and prepares the way for the empires to come. It is the bridge between the quiet hymns of the forest and the grandeur of royal courts. And as we close our eyes to this age, we carry with us the rhythm of the chants, the flow of the rivers, the whisper of sacred words that have survived for over 3,000 years. The Vedic chants still linger in the air, soft echoes that drift like smoke into the horizon. We move gently forward through centuries, and as the small kingdoms of the Ganges plain grow stronger, the land prepares for something new. It is here, in the 4th century BCE, that the first great Indian empire will rise. This is the story of the Maurya Empire, a tale of ambition, power, and an extraordinary transformation of the human heart. The rise of Chandragupta Maurya. The year is around 321 BCE. In the kingdom of Magadha, one of the 16 Mahajanapadas, a young man named Chandragupta Maurya appears on the stage of history. Some say he was of humble birth, raised in obscurity before destiny found him. Others claim he was born into a noble family, but lost his inheritance. What we do know is that, with the guidance of his brilliant teacher, Chanakya, he would change the course of India forever. Chanakya, also known as Kautilya, was a scholar, strategist, and author of the Arthashastra, a text filled with advice on statecraft, economics, and diplomacy. Together, Chandragupta and Chanakya dreamed of overthrowing the rulers of Magadha and uniting the subcontinent under a single power. At the same time, the shadow of Alexander the Great loomed over the northwest. Alexander had invaded India in 326 BCE, reaching the banks of the Beas River before his weary soldiers refused to march further. Though Alexander soon died, his generals remained in the region, carving out kingdoms in Punjab and beyond. Chandragupta, young and ambitious, saw an opportunity. With determination and skill, he defeated these foreign powers and established his rule over northwest India. One by one, the rival kingdoms fell, until at last Chandragupta overthrew the Nanda dynasty of Magadha and declared himself emperor. Thus began the Maurya Empire, stretching from the Himalayas in the north to the Deccan in the south, from the Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal. Imagine the subcontinent now. Roads busy with traders, markets filled with spices and silk, royal palaces rising above bustling cities. For the first time in Indian history, a single ruler governed such vast lands. The rule of Chandragupta. Chandragupta's empire was carefully organized. Provinces were ruled by governors, taxes were collected systematically, and spies kept watch over distant regions. The Arthashastra advised the king to be wise, cautious, and ruthless when necessary. It spoke of diplomacy, war, economics, and justice, offering a vision of governance far ahead of its time. But life in the empire was not only about politics. Farmers tended the fertile fields of the Ganges Valley. Merchants carried goods along the roads, and artisans shaped metal, stone, and clay into objects of beauty. In villages, simple rituals honored the gods, while in cities, scholars debated philosophy. The Maurya Empire was a living mosaic, woven from countless lives. Toward the end of his reign, Chandragupta grew weary of power. According to legend, he embraced the teachings of Jainism, renounced his throne, and lived his last years in meditation and austerity. His story reminds us that even the mightiest rulers are drawn to peace in the end. The reign of Bindusara. After Chandragupta, his son Bindusara took the throne. Bindusara expanded the empire further south, reaching into the Deccan. Though less famous than his father and son, he maintained stability and kept the empire strong. The Maurya dynasty was now firmly rooted, preparing the way for its most remarkable ruler, Ashoka the Great. Ashoka the Conqueror. When Ashoka came to power around 268 BCE, the empire was already vast. Strong, ambitious, and determined, Ashoka sought to expand its boundaries even more. His most famous campaign was against the kingdom of Kalinga, located on the eastern coast of India. The war was brutal. Ancient accounts tell us that more than 100,000 people were killed, and countless others were displaced. Ashoka won the battle, but when he looked upon the suffering, the fields covered with the fallen, the cries of families torn apart, something within him changed forever. Imagine the silence after battle, the emperor standing alone, hearing only the echoes of sorrow. In that silence, Ashoka realized that true victory could not be found through bloodshed. His heart once hardened by ambition, opened to compassion. Ashoka the Compassionate. After Kalinga, Ashoka embraced the teachings of Buddhism. He renounced conquest by the sword and chose, instead, the path of dharma, righteousness, justice, and moral duty. His transformation was profound, and it shaped not only his empire, but also the history of the world. Ashoka became a different kind of ruler. He built hospitals, planted trees along roads, and dug wells for travelers. He sent missionaries across Asia, spreading the message of compassion and peace. From Sri Lanka to Central Asia, the teachings of the Buddha traveled far, carried by the emperor's vision. To ensure his message endured, Ashoka had edicts carved into stone pillars and rocks across his empire. These inscriptions spoke of kindness to animals, respect for all religions, and the duty of rulers to care for their people. Many of these pillars still stand today, their words gentle reminders of a king who turned away from violence to embrace peace. Daily life in the Maurya Empire. While emperors shaped history, ordinary people lived lives filled with rhythm and simplicity. Farmers rose with the sun, working in fields of rice, wheat, and sugarcane. Merchants traveled in caravans, carrying pepper, cotton, and precious stones to distant lands. In workshops, potters shaped clay, weavers dyed cloth in deep reds and blues, and metalworkers forged tools and ornaments. Children learned traditions from their elders, stories of gods and heroes, tales that would one day form the great epics. Villages were close-knit, where festivals brought joy. Music filled the air, and dances honored the cycles of nature. Life was not without hardship. Floods, droughts, and disease challenged communities. But the empire's stability provided a foundation for growth. Beneath the watch of the Maurya rulers, India's cultural, economic, and spiritual life blossomed. The legacy of Ashoka. Ashoka ruled for nearly 40 years. By the time he died, the Maurya Empire was at its height, covering almost the entire subcontinent. But more than the lands he ruled, it was the ideas he left behind that endured. His message of tolerance and nonviolence influenced generations. Buddhism, once a small sect, spread widely under his patronage. Even today, the wheel of Dharma, the symbol found on Ashoka's pillars, is at the center of India's national flag. Yet, after his death, the empire slowly weakened. Successors could not maintain the same strength, and within 50 years, the Maurya dynasty faded. But the memory of Ashoka, the warrior who became a messenger of peace, remained eternal. Closing reflection. The story of the Maurya Empire is the story of transformation. From the ambitious rise of Chandragupta to the steady rule of Bindusara, to the extraordinary change of heart in Ashoka, we see how power can shape the world, and how compassion can shape it even more deeply. As we leave this chapter, let us picture a quiet scene. A stone pillar standing tall under the wide Indian sky, its its inscription worn by centuries of wind and rain, still whispering Ashoka's words of peace. We take a slow breath, carrying this message with us, and prepare to step into the next age of India's story. The Maurya Empire has faded into memory. The mighty Ashoka is gone, and centuries pass as the subcontinent changes hands between many regional powers. Kingdoms rise and fall like waves upon the shore. And then, around the 4th century CE, a new dynasty emerges from the heart of northern India. Their name is the Guptas, and under their reign, India will experience what many call a golden age. The rise of the Gupta dynasty. The Guptas began modestly, ruling a small region in the fertile plains of the Ganges. The founder, Srigupta, was not a famous conqueror, but his descendants expanded their power steadily. By the time Chandragupta I came to the throne around 320 CE, the dynasty was ready to step into greatness. Through alliances and marriages, Chandragupta extended his influence. His son, Samudragupta, transformed the Guptas into a vast empire, stretching across much of northern India. Samudragupta was both a warrior and a patron of the arts. Inscriptions describe him as a king of great courage, yet also a lover of poetry and music. He is remembered not only for his victories in battle, but also for the harmony he brought to his realm. By the reign of Chandragupta II, also called Vikramaditya, the Gupta Empire reached its height. Cities flourished, trade routes thrived, and the courts shone with scholars, artists, and poets. Imagine an empire where wealth was not measured only in gold, but also in wisdom and creativity. The spirit of the Golden Age. Why is this period called a golden age? It was not because every life was perfect. There were still struggles, inequalities, and wars. But in these centuries, India produced works of thought, art, and science that still echo across the world today. Let us walk slowly through this age, as if strolling through a peaceful garden, pausing to admire its flowers, one by one. Literature and poetry. In the Gupta period, Sanskrit literature reached new heights. The great poet and playwright Kalidasa composed works that are still celebrated as masterpieces. His play Shakuntala tells the tender story of love, loss, and reunion, filled with imagery of forests, rivers, and the quiet beauty of nature. Reading his verses feels like listening to a soft melody drifting on the evening breeze. Other scholars wrote fables, stories of animals and humans that carried lessons about wisdom and folly. Collections like the Panchatantra traveled far beyond India, influencing tales told in the Middle East, Europe, and beyond. In these gentle stories, a jackal, a lion, or a clever crow might speak words of truth that guided human lives. Science and mathematics. The Gupta Age was also a time of great scientific discovery. Scholars studied the skies, mapping the movements of planets and stars. Astronomers like Aryabhata described the rotation of the Earth and calculated the length of the solar year with remarkable accuracy. He even suggested that the Earth was round, spinning gently through the heavens. Mathematics, too, blossomed. It was in India that the concept of zero as a number took form, an idea so simple, yet so profound, that it would transform the world's ability to calculate, to build, to understand. The decimal system, which we use every day without thinking, has roots in this time. Imagine the quiet joy of a scholar, sitting by lamplight, realizing that nothing, shunya, could be as powerful as something. Art and architecture. The Gupta period also gave birth to extraordinary art. Sculptors carved graceful images of the Buddha, serene faces that seemed to radiate inner peace. Temples rose, adorned with pillars and carvings that told stories of gods and heroes. At Ajanta, painters decorated cave walls with vivid frescoes. These paintings, still visible today, show scenes of royal courts, gentle animals, and moments from the life of the Buddha. The colors, though faded with time, still carry warmth, as if they were brushed on yesterday. Standing before them, one feels the quiet heartbeat of an age that valued beauty as much as power. Daily life in the Gupta age, beyond the palaces and temples, ordinary life carried its steady rhythm. Villages thrived on farming rice in the east, wheat in the north, cotton in the central lands. Farmers worked the soil, children played by the rivers, and festivals filled the seasons with joy. Merchants carried spices, silk, and gems along the Silk Road, connecting India to China, Persia, and Rome. Ships sailed across the seas, bringing Indian goods to distant shores. In return, ideas traveled into India, new art styles, new stories, and new traditions that mingled with the old. The Gupta rulers supported this harmony. Though Hinduism was the dominant faith, Buddhism and Jainism continued to flourish. Temples and monasteries stood side by side, and the spirit of tolerance allowed creativity to bloom. The universities of Nalanda and Takshashila, one of the shining lights of the Gupta era, was education. The great university at Nalanda became a center of learning that drew students from across Asia. Thousands of scholars lived there, studying philosophy, medicine, astronomy, and the arts. Monks from China and beyond traveled long journeys just to sit at the feet of Indian teachers. Imagine walking through the quiet courtyards of Nalanda, the air filled with the sound of debates and chants. Scrolls and manuscripts lined the libraries, knowledge carefully preserved by patient hands. In these halls, the wisdom of the age was nurtured, to be carried forward for centuries. The decline of the Gupta Empire. Like all golden ages, this one too was fragile. By the late 5th century, pressures from outside and within began to weaken the empire. Invasions from the Huns in the northwest strained its defenses. Regional rulers sought independence, and slowly the unity of the empire dissolved. By the mid-6th century, the Gupta dynasty had faded. Their cities grew quieter, their courts less brilliant. But the light they had kindled, the poetry, the mathematics, The art, the philosophy continued to glow. The legacy of the Guptas. The Gupta period reminds us that greatness is not measured only in conquest or wealth. Sometimes it is measured in wisdom, in creativity, in the quiet flowering of human thought. The discoveries of this age traveled far and wide, shaping cultures across the world. And within India, the memory of the Guptas remained as the dream of a time when learning and beauty flourished together. Closing reflection. As we leave the Gupta Empire behind, imagine yourself standing in one of the Ajanta caves. Before you, a painting glows faintly in the dim light figures with gentle smiles, colors softened by time. The silence of the cave is deep, yet filled with presence. In this stillness, you feel the breath of an age long past, an age that continues to inspire. Take a slow breath and let the quiet beauty of this moment carry you forward. The Maurya Empire has faded into memory. The mighty Ashoka is gone, and centuries pass as the subcontinent changes hands between many regional powers. Kingdoms rise and fall like waves upon the shore. And then, around the 4th century CE, a new dynasty emerges from the heart of northern India. Their name is the Guptas, and under their reign, India will experience what many call a golden age. The rise of the Gupta dynasty. The Guptas began modestly, ruling a small region in the fertile plains of the Ganges. The founder, Sri Gupta, was not a famous conqueror, but his descendants expanded their power steadily. By the time Chandragupta I came to the throne around 320 CE, the dynasty was ready to step into greatness. Through alliances and marriages, Chandragupta extended his influence. His son, Samudragupta, transformed the Guptas into a vast empire, stretching across much of northern India. Samudragupta was both a warrior and a patron of the arts. Inscriptions describe him as a king of great courage, yet also a lover of poetry and music. He is remembered not only for his victories in battle, but also for the harmony he brought to his realm. By the reign of Chandragupta II, also called Vikramaditya, the Gupta Empire reached its height. Cities flourished, trade routes thrived, and the courts shone with scholars, artists, and poets. Imagine an empire where wealth was not measured only in gold, but also in wisdom and creativity. The spirit of the Golden Age. Why is this period called a golden age? It was not because every life was perfect. There were still struggles, inequalities, and wars. But in these centuries, India produced works of thought, art, and science that still echo across the world today. Let us walk slowly through this age, as if strolling through a peaceful garden, pausing to admire its flowers, one by one. Literature and poetry. In the Gupta period, Sanskrit literature reached new heights. The great poet and playwright Kalidasa composed works that are still celebrated as masterpieces. His play Shakuntala tells the tender story of love, loss, and reunion, filled with imagery of forests, rivers, and the quiet beauty of nature. Reading his verses feels like listening to a soft melody drift Other scholars wrote fables, stories of animals and humans that carried lessons about wisdom and folly. Collections like the Panchatantra traveled far beyond India, influencing tales told in the Middle East, Europe, and beyond. In these gentle stories, a jackal, a lion, or a clever crow might speak words of truth that guided human lives. Science and mathematics. The Gupta Age was also a time of great scientific discovery. Scholars studied the skies, mapping the movements of planets and stars. Astronomers like Aryabhata described the rotation of the Earth and calculated the length of the solar year with remarkable accuracy. He even suggested that the Earth was round, spinning gently through the heavens. Mathematics, too, blossomed. It was in India that the concept of zero as a number took form, an idea so simple, yet so profound, that it would transform the world's ability to calculate, to build, to understand. The decimal system, which we use every day without thinking, has roots in this time. Imagine the quiet joy of a scholar, sitting by lamplight, realizing that nothing, shunya, could be as powerful as something. Art and architecture. The Gupta period also gave birth to extraordinary art. Sculptors carved graceful images of the Buddha, serene faces that seemed to radiate inner peace. Temples rose, adorned with pillars and carvings that told stories of gods and heroes. At Ajanta, painters decorated cave walls with vivid frescoes. These paintings, still visible today, show scenes of royal courts, gentle animals, and moments from the life of the Buddha. The colors, though faded with time, still carry warmth, as if they were brushed on yesterday. Standing before them, one feels the quiet heartbeat of an age that valued beauty as much as power. Daily life in the Gupta Age. Beyond the palaces and temples, ordinary life carried its steady rhythm. Villages thrived on farming rice in the east, wheat in the north, cotton in the central lands. Farmers worked the soil, children played by the rivers, and festivals filled the seasons with joy. Merchants carried spices, silk, and gems along the Silk Road, connecting India to China, Persia, and Rome. Ships sailed across the seas, bringing Indian goods to distant shores. In return, ideas traveled into India, new art styles, new stories, and new traditions that mingled with the old. The Gupta rulers supported this harmony. Though Hinduism was the dominant faith, Buddhism and Jainism continued to flourish. Temples and monasteries stood side by side, and the spirit of tolerance allowed creativity to bloom. The universities of Nalanda and Takshashila, one of the shining lights of the Gupta era, was education. The great university at Nalanda became a center of learning that drew students from across Asia. Thousands of scholars lived there, studying philosophy, medicine, astronomy, and the arts. Monks from China and beyond traveled long journeys just to sit at the feet of Indian teachers. Imagine walking through the quiet courtyards of Nalanda, the air filled with the sound of debates and chants. Scrolls manuscripts lined the libraries, knowledge carefully preserved by patient hands. In these halls, the wisdom of the age was nurtured, to be carried forward for centuries. The decline of the Gupta Empire. Like all golden ages, this one too was fragile. By the late 5th century, pressures from outside and within began to weaken the empire. Invasions from the Huns in the northwest strained its defenses. Regional rulers sought independence, and slowly the unity of the empire dissolved. By the mid-6th century, the Gupta dynasty had faded. Their cities grew quieter, their courts less brilliant. But the light they had kindled, the poetry, the mathematics, the art, the philosophy, continued to glow. The legacy of the Guptas. The Gupta period reminds us that greatness is not measured only in conquest or wealth. Sometimes it is measured in wisdom, in creativity, in the quiet flowering of human thought. The discoveries of this age traveled far and wide, shaping cultures across the world. And within India, the memory of the Guptas remained as the dream of a time when learning and beauty flourished together. Closing reflection. As we leave the Gupta Empire behind, imagine yourself standing in one of the Ajanta caves. Before you, a painting glows faintly in the dim light, figures with gentle smiles, colors softened by time. The silence of the cave is deep, yet filled with presence. In this stillness, you feel the breath of an age long past, an age that continues to inspire. Take a slow breath and let the quiet beauty of this moment carry you forward. The story of India flows like a wide river, carrying with it the memories of empires past, the whispers of ancient hymns, and the quiet lives of countless people. After the era of regional kingdoms and the first arrival of Islam, a new and transformative period begins, the age of the Delhi Sultanate. From the early 13th century until the 16th century, Delhi became the center of power, culture, and administration, shaping northern India in ways that would endure for centuries. The rise of the Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate was not born overnight. Its emergence was gradual, rooted in the campaigns of Turkish and Afghan rulers who arrived from Central Asia. Among the earliest was Qutbuddin Aibak, a former general of the Ghurid dynasty, who established himself as the first Sultan of Delhi around 1206 CE. From modest beginnings, he laid the foundations of a new political and cultural era. Imagine Delhi at that time, a city surrounded by walls, its streets bustling with traders, artisans, and travelers from distant lands. Horses and elephants moved slowly through dusty avenues. Merchants carried spices, silk, and gems, and scholars debated philosophy, astronomy, and literature. The city was a living tapestry, woven from many threads, both old and new. The early sultans faced challenges, resistance from local kingdoms, rival claimants to the throne, and the vast task of governing diverse lands. Yet they also brought centralized administration, improving communication, law, and taxation. For ordinary people, this meant greater stability, safer roads, and the ability to cultivate, trade, and create with relative peace. Architectural wonders and cultural flourishing. One of the lasting legacies of the Delhi Sultanate is its architecture, which harmoniously blended Indian and Islamic styles. The Qutb Minar, a soaring tower of red sandstone and marble, stands as a symbol of this synthesis. Its carved inscriptions tell stories of faith and victory, yet its slender elegance and intricate details also speak of an aesthetic vision that valued beauty as much as power. Mosques, tombs, and forts were built throughout the Sultanate. The Quwwatul Islam Mosque, constructed with stones repurposed from Hindu and Jain temples, illustrates the merging of cultures. Arches and domes rose alongside carved pillars, blending the spiritual traditions of different communities into spaces of contemplation and gathering. This period was also marked by the growth of literature, music, and learning. Persian became the language of administration and poetry, while Sanskrit and regional languages continued to flourish. Scholars, poets, and musicians were welcomed in the courts of Delhi, creating an environment where knowledge, art, and culture thrived together. Daily life in the Sultanate, life for ordinary people, carried on with its own rhythm. Farmers tended wheat, barley, and rice fields. Artisans crafted pots, textiles, and metalwork, and merchants carried their goods to bustling markets. Festivals continued to be celebrated, both Hindu and Muslim, marking seasonal changes and spiritual devotion. Children played along the banks of rivers, listening to the tales of wandering storytellers, while elders shared wisdom under the shade of banyan trees. The city of Delhi and its surrounding towns were alive, not only with trade and politics, but with the quiet heartbeat of daily life, governance, justice, and society. The sultans of Delhi established administrative systems that balanced authority with oversight. Governors managed provinces, judges oversaw disputes, and scholars advised on law and ethics. The Iqtidari system allowed the sultan to maintain control over distant lands, while local leaders collected taxes and ensured order. Although the era included military campaigns and occasional conflict, it also brought stability and integration. Roads were maintained, markets regulated, and trade routes secured, allowing people to live, travel, and exchange ideas more safely than in many previous periods. The Sultanate was a place of cultural exchange. Persian, Arabic, and local languages mingled. Architectural techniques from Central Asia merged with Indian craftsmanship. New art forms and musical styles emerged, blending traditions from many lands. Imagine a quiet courtyard where a musician plucks the strings of a sitar, while the scent of incense drifts through the air, carrying the echoes of centuries of history. The challenges and resilience of the Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate was not without trials. Mongol invasions from the northwest threatened stability, while internal disputes often challenged authority. Each sultan faced the delicate task of maintaining loyalty among nobles, protecting borders, and governing a population diverse in language, faith, and custom. Yet, through these challenges, the Sultanate endured. Its resilience lay in the ability to adapt and integrate. Conquerors became patrons of local arts. Foreign scholars learned Sanskrit, while Indian poets composed in Persian. The land, with its rivers, forests, and cities, continued its steady rhythm, carrying life forward even amidst upheaval. Spiritual and cultural harmony, one of the remarkable aspects of the Delhi Sultanate, was the coexistence of multiple religious and philosophical traditions. Hindu temples and Buddhist monasteries continued to function alongside mosques and madrasas. Mystical teachers, such as Sufi saints, traveled widely, spreading messages of love, devotion, and compassion. Their teachings emphasized the inner journey, offering spaces where people of different faiths could meet, reflect, and seek guidance. Art and music flourished within this spiritual mosaic. Calligraphy adorned walls, while miniature paintings depicted courtly life, myths, and nature. Poetry celebrated both devotion and worldly beauty, creating a gentle rhythm in everyday life. Imagine walking through a garden at dusk, where the soft murmur of a river meets the faint melody of a lute, and the scent of flowers blends with the evening breeze, a perfect reflection of the Sultanate's cultural synthesis. Legacy of the Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate shaped India in profound ways. It established centralized governance in northern India, promoted cultural exchange, and created architectural and artistic forms that influenced generations. More importantly, it laid the foundations for future empires, including the Mughal dynasty, which would carry India's story forward into new realms of grandeur. For the people of the land, the Sultanate period was one of adaptation and continuity. Life, with its daily rhythms and quiet joys, persisted even as rulers came and went. The rivers continued to flow, festivals continued to be celebrated, and knowledge continued to be shared, reminding all who lived during this era that the heartbeat of a civilization lies not only in its rulers, but in its people. Closing reflection. As we leave the era of the Delhi Sultanate, imagine standing on the walls of an ancient fort, watching the sun sink behind the horizon. The city below hums softly with life. Traders pack their goods, children laugh in the courtyards, and a distant temple bell tolls as the call to prayer rises into the evening sky. In this quiet scene, we sense the enduring rhythm of India, a land shaped by conquest and culture, by faith and philosophy, by the tireless passage of centuries. The Delhi Sultanate has faded into memory, leaving behind its cities, its roads, and the quiet rhythm of everyday life. From its foundations arose a new chapter in India's story, the age of the Mughal Empire. Beginning in the early 16th century, this dynasty would bring not only power and politics, but also a flourishing of art, architecture, and culture, leaving a legacy that endures to this day. The arrival of Babur in 15 1526, a man named Babur crossed the mountains from Central Asia into northern India. A descendant of Timur and Genghis Khan, Babur was both a warrior and a lover of nature, poetry, and music. His victories on the battlefield were matched by his sensitivity to beauty and learning. Babur defeated the Sultan of Delhi at the First Battle of Panipat, establishing the Mughal presence in India. Yet, he did not simply conquer. He observed the land carefully, the rivers, the plains, the forests, and the people. He wrote vividly in his memoirs, Baburnama, describing gardens, birds, and the rhythms of local life, blending the record of conquest with gentle reflection. Humayun and the struggle for stability. Babur's son, Humayun, faced challenges in consolidating the empire. He experienced setbacks and even temporary exile, wandering through Persia and returning to India years later. These years of trial taught the young emperor about patience, strategy, and the delicate balance between ambition and harmony. During this period, the Mughal Empire was not yet the vast, cultured realm it would become. But even in struggle, the seeds of an enduring dynasty were planted, seeds of administrative organization, architectural innovation, and cultural blending. Akbar, the great unifier. The empire truly blossomed under Akbar the Great, who ascended the throne in 1556 at just 13 years old. Akbar's reign, which lasted 50 years, is remembered as one of the most remarkable in world history. He expanded the empire across northern and central India through a combination of diplomacy, military skill, and wise governance. Yet Akbar's greatness was not measured only in conquest. He sought unity among India's diverse people. He abolished taxes that unfairly burdened non-Muslims, invited scholars of different religions to his court, and encouraged debates on philosophy, ethics, and governance. Akbar even developed a new system of administration that allowed local leaders to manage their lands while remaining loyal to the empire. Culture and architecture under Akbar. Under Akbar, the Mughal court became a center of art, literature, and architecture. The emperor commissioned grand buildings, including forts and palaces, adorned with intricate carvings, gardens, and flowing water features. The city of Fatehpur Sikri, built as a new capital, reflected his vision of harmony, beauty, and spiritual depth. Art flourished as well. Painters created miniature works filled with detail, depicting court life, battles, and nature. Literature, music, and poetry thrived, blending Persian influences with local Indian traditions. The Mughal court was a gentle symphony of culture, where creativity and refinement were celebrated alongside politics and strategy. Daily life in the Mughal Empire, while emperors shaped history, life for ordinary people continued its steady rhythm. Farmers cultivated wheat, rice, and sugarcane. Traders carried spices, textiles, and precious stones to bustling markets. Artisans crafted pottery, jewelry, and textiles with care and skill. Villagers celebrated seasonal festivals, Music filled the air, and children played along riverbanks, listening to stories of heroes, saints, and poets. Cities were alive with movement and conversation. Caravans arrived from distant lands, bringing goods and ideas, and scholars studied at mosques, madrasas, and libraries. The Mughal Empire became a space where diverse cultures, religions, and languages coexisted, creating a mosaic that was both stable and vibrant. Jahangir Shah Jahan and the Golden Legacy. Following Akbar, his son Jahangir and grandson Shah Jahan continued the tradition of blending power with culture. Jahangir was a patron of the arts, known for his keen eye for painting and nature. Shah Jahan, inspired by love and devotion, commissioned the Taj Mahal, a monument of unparalleled beauty dedicated to his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal. The Taj Mahal, with its gleaming white marble, reflecting pools and lush gardens, stands as a symbol not only of love, but of the Mughal commitment to harmony, artistry, and detail. Walking through its gardens is like moving through a dream, every corner balanced, every reflection gentle, every step a reminder of human creativity and devotion. Governance and administration. The Mughal rulers established sophisticated systems of administration and law. Land revenue systems were implemented to support both the state and local communities. Governors, judges, and administrators managed provinces while ensuring the smooth functioning of the empire. Trade flourished under this system, connecting India internally and with distant lands. The empire also encouraged scholarship and learning. Astronomers, mathematicians, philosophers, and poets were welcomed at the court. Libraries flourished, filled with manuscripts and scrolls in Persian, Arabic, and Sanskrit. The Mughal era, like a calm river, nurtured knowledge, art, and the quiet beauty of everyday life alongside its grandeur and authority. Spiritual and cultural harmony. Religion during the Mughal period was diverse. Islam was the ruling faith, but Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, and other local traditions continued to thrive. Akbar's policy of Salai Kul, or universal tolerance, encouraged dialogue and mutual respect among communities. Sufi saints traveled widely, teaching love, compassion, and the inner journey. Temples and mosques, shrines and gardens coexisted in cities and towns, creating spaces where life was not only about survival, but about reflection, beauty, and harmony. The legacy of the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire left an enduring mark on India. It shaped architecture, painting, literature, governance, and cultural life in ways that persist even today. The empire also reinforced the idea that power and culture can coexist, and that compassion, tolerance, and creativity are as important as military conquest. Though later emperors faced challenges, and the empire eventually declined, the legacy of Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan endures. Gardens, forts, paintings, and literature remind us of a time when the subcontinent flourished with art, knowledge, and peaceful coexistence. Closing reflection. As we leave the Mughal Empire, imagine walking slowly through the gardens of the Taj Mahal at dusk. The sky glows with soft colors. The reflecting pools mirror the delicate arches, and the scent of flowers drifts gently in the evening air. Children play quietly along the pathways. Merchants close their stalls, and the distant sound of a flute drifts through the gardens. In this gentle scene, we feel the heartbeat of centuries, the blend of power and culture, conquest and compassion, history and humanity. The Mughal Empire reminds us that even amidst the weight of empire, the human spirit can create beauty, harmony, and lasting memory. The Mughal Empire, like a vast river, had flowed powerfully across India, shaping cities, courts, and the daily lives of millions. Yet, as all rivers eventually meet new landscapes, the empire gradually began to fragment. By the 18th century, its central authority weakened, leaving space for regional kingdoms to rise once more, and for new external forces to make their presence felt. The rise of regional powers, northern, western, and southern India, saw the emergence of formidable regional kingdoms. The Marathas, originating in the rugged terrain of western India, expanded their influence across much of the subcontinent. Known for their mobility, strategic skill, and resilient governance, they challenged the remnants of Mughal authority and brought a sense of regional identity to vast territories. In the north, Sikh communities consolidated into organized polities under leaders like Maharaja Ranjit Singh. With their emphasis on martial discipline, religious devotion, and community governance, the Sikhs created a powerful state in Punjab that maintained relative stability and prosperity. Their cities, gurdwaras, and forts became centers of culture and learning, while daily life in surrounding villages continued in quiet rhythms of agriculture, craft, and trade. In the south, kingdoms such as the Nizams of Hyderabad and the Kingdom of Mysore rose to prominence. These states fostered art, architecture, and scholarship, demonstrating that even as the Mughals receded, India's cultural richness continued to thrive. Palaces, temples, and marketplaces reflected the skill and creativity of local artisans. Trade networks extended within India and beyond, ensuring that commerce, agriculture, and learning remained steady pillars of life. European traders arrive. Amid these dynamic regional kingdoms, European traders began arriving in increasing numbers. Portuguese merchants had been present since the early 16th century, establishing ports along the west coast. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the British East India Company, along with the Dutch, French, and Danish traders, had established settlements and trading posts. These European traders brought with them not only goods such as textiles, spices, and metals, but also new technologies, ideas, and political ambitions. Coastal cities like Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras became bustling centers of trade, where ships from across the seas docked and goods changed hands amidst the scent of salt water and spices. The rhythm of commerce intertwined steady cadence of local life, creating a delicate balance of continuity and change. The political landscape. The arrival of Europeans coincided with intense political fragmentation. Regional kingdoms often competed with each other for resources, territory, and influence. Alliances were formed and broken, wars erupted and subsided, and treaties were signed with a careful balance of pragmatism and strategy. In this climate, the Europeans were able to leverage their military technology, naval power, and strategic alliances to gain influence. Initially, they acted as trade partners, but gradually, they began to intervene in regional disputes, offering protection in exchange for privileges. Cities and towns witnessed a subtle but steady transformation, where the presence of foreign advisors, troops, and merchants became a familiar part of life. Daily life in the age of regional kingdoms and European traders. Despite these political shifts, ordinary life continued much as it had for centuries. Farmers tended to their fields of rice, wheat, and sugarcane, guided by the seasons and monsoons. Artisans produced pottery, textiles, and metalwork that reflected both local traditions and the influences of foreign trade. Children played by rivers and courtyards, learning stories, songs, and skills from elders. Festivals and religious ceremonies remained central to community life. Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim traditions coexisted in cities and villages, and regional rulers often patronized multiple faiths, encouraging harmony. The rhythm of daily life work, worship, and celebration carried forward, unbroken even amidst political change. Architecture, art, and cultural synthesis. This era saw continued innovation in architecture and art. Palaces were built with a mix of indigenous and European-inspired styles, while forts and public buildings reflected both defensive needs and aesthetic elegance. Painting, music, and literature continued to flourish, supported by both regional rulers and wealthy merchants. Religious architecture reflected a blending of traditions. Temples, mosques, gurdwaras, and churches coexisted, each with its distinctive form, yet harmoniously situated within cities and towns. Sufi shrines and Hindu temples alike became spaces where people reflected, prayed, and sought solace, reminding us that spirituality transcends political boundaries. The beginnings of colonial control. As the 18th century progressed, the British East India Company became increasingly powerful. Through a combination of diplomacy, military engagement, and economic influence, they began to consolidate control over large swathes of India. While initially focused on trade, their authority gradually extended into political administration, setting the stage for the colonial period. Yet this transformation was gradual. Life for villagers and city dwellers continued with its familiar rhythm. Markets thrived, festivals were celebrated, rivers flowed, and the natural world persisted. Even as new rulers and foreign influences arrived, the heartbeat of the land, the daily work, the songs, the prayers, and the quiet beauty of life remained constant. The legacy of regional kingdoms. The regional kingdoms of this period remind us that resilience and adaptation are central to history. Even amidst fragmentation, local rulers fostered culture, education, and community life. Artisans, scholars, and religious leaders nurtured continuity. Trade connected distant regions, and ordinary life maintained its steady rhythm. In many ways, these kingdoms preserved the richness of Indian civilization, providing a bridge between the grandeur of the Mughals and the profound changes that would come with colonial rule. They ensured that despite political upheaval, India's cultural, spiritual, and artistic life continued to thrive. Closing reflection. As we leave this chapter, imagine walking through a bustling market in a city governed by a regional king. Merchants arrange colorful fabrics. Spices fill the air with scent. Children run and laugh along the cobblestone streets. And the distant sound of temple bells and call to prayer mix gently in the evening air. In this scene, we feel the resilience of life, the ability of people, communities, and cultures to endure, adapt, and flourish even amidst change. The era of regional kingdoms and early colonial influence is a reminder that history is not only shaped by empires, but by the quiet, persistent rhythm of everyday life. The gentle flow of India's history, with its empires, kingdoms, and vibrant cultures, met a new current in the 18th century. The increasing influence of the British East India Company. What began as trade gradually transformed into governance, altering the landscape of the subcontinent and introducing new rhythms into daily life. The arrival of the British East India Company. The British East India Company arrived on Indian shores as a commercial venture, seeking spices, textiles, and other goods. Their initial settlements were modest, small warehouses, trading posts, and administrative offices along the coastlines of Bengal, Bombay, and Madras. Over time, however, their ambitions expanded. Imagine a bustling port city. Ships from England, Holland, and other European nations dock alongside local dhows. Merchants, sailors, and traders fill the streets, carrying cargo, exchanging coins, and sharing stories. The scent of salt water mixes with spices, the rhythm of waves echoing the constant flow of commerce. The shift from trade to power, initially focused on trade, the British East India Company quickly realized that controlling land meant controlling wealth. Their involvement in local politics grew as they allied with one kingdom against another, offered military support to regional rulers, and gradually expanded their influence. Conflicts like the Battle of Plassey, 1757, marked turning points. The company defeated the Nawab of Bengal, securing both territory and revenue. From that moment, the British presence transformed from mere traders to administrators, setting the stage for centuries of colonial rule. administration, and governance. The British introduced new systems of governance, law, and taxation. They collected land revenue through structured systems, like the permanent settlement in Bengal, which altered the relationship between peasants and landowners. Roads and infrastructure were improved to facilitate trade and administration, and English education and language began to spread among local elites. In cities under company rule, courts and offices reflected a new order. Officials maintained records, collected taxes, and enforced laws, creating a sense of organization previously unseen on such a large scale. Yet life for ordinary villagers often continued as before. Farmers worked fields, artisans crafted, and festivals marked the passing seasons. The natural rhythms of life persisted, even as the administrative landscape changed. Economic and cultural interactions. The British presence brought both challenge and opportunity. Local artisans and traders found new markets for their goods, while some traditional industries faced competition from imported European products. Ports and cities thrived as commerce expanded, and new technologies, printing presses, mechanical tools, and navigation methods introduced ideas and practices that blended with local traditions. Culturally, the British encouraged some education and scholarship, though often with the aim of serving administration. English schools were established, producing a class of Indians familiar with European thought and governance. Meanwhile, traditional learning centers in Sanskrit, Persian, and Arabic continued to flourish, ensuring that India's rich intellectual heritage remained vibrant. Daily life under early colonial rule. Life under the British East India Company had its contrasts. In the bustling streets of Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay, merchants and sailors spoke multiple languages. Coins changed hands frequently, and goods from across the globe were traded daily. Inland villages, however, remained largely connected to their own cycles, sowing and harvesting crops, celebrating festivals, and following the gentle rhythm of rivers and seasons. Festivals, religious observances, and community gatherings persisted. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, and Christian traditions coexisted, and people maintained the delicate balance of social and spiritual life. Even amidst political change, the heartbeat of ordinary life, work, play, prayer, and reflection continued steadily. Architecture and urban development. The British introduced new architectural styles and urban planning. Forts, administrative buildings, and warehouses reflected European designs, while older Indian temples, mosques, and palaces remained centers of spiritual and cultural life. Cities like Calcutta became hubs where Eastern and Western influences intertwined markets, schools, and homes, blending local traditions with colonial structures. Bridges, canals, and roads improved trade and communication, subtly altering the landscape without erasing the rhythms of villages and towns. Artisans adapted to new materials and styles, merging Indian creativity with European techniques, producing works that reflected a blending of traditions, challenges, and adaptation. The early colonial period was not without hardship. Land taxes, revenue demands, and occasional conflicts imposed pressures on communities. Yet people adapted. Farmers found ways to sustain crops, artisans innovated to meet new market demands, and scholars and spiritual leaders continued to teach, write, and guide their communities. The British East India Company, though dominant politically, relied on local structures, administrators, and intermediaries. In many ways, it was a delicate dance of influence and adaptation, where the subcontinent's enduring cultural, spiritual, and social rhythms persisted beneath the veneer of new authority. The legacy of early colonial rule, the company era set the stage for the British Raj that would follow in the 19th century. Roads, ports, and administration systems introduced by the company laid foundations for modern governance, while the interaction of Indian and European ideas reshaped society in subtle ways. Trade networks expanded, education evolved, and cultural exchange intensified. Yet through all these changes, the land's heartbeat remained. Rivers continued to flow, monsoons arrived with predictability, and festivals continued to mark the passage of seasons. Villages and towns preserved their traditions, ensuring continuity even amidst profound political transformation. Closing reflection. As we leave the era of the British East India Company, imagine standing at a bustling port at sunset. Ships are docked along the harbor, their sails gently swaying in the evening breeze. Traders and merchants exchange goods and stories, while children play near the water's edge. Temple bells toll in the distance, mingling with the rhythmic sound of waves and the faint call of a distant mosque. In this quiet harmony, we sense the resilience of India's people and culture. Even as new rulers arrived and foreign systems were introduced, the natural and cultural rhythms of life endured. The story of the company period reminds us that history is shaped not only by power and politics, but by the steady, persistent heartbeat of ordinary life. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the British Raj still stretched across the Indian subcontinent. Railways carried goods, cities bustled with colonial buildings, and the Union Jack fluttered above government halls. Yet, beneath this order, a quiet stirring was growing. The people of India were beginning to dream of freedom. The seeds had already been planted in the previous century. Now, they began to bloom. Voices rose from every corner of the land: teachers, poets, farmers, and merchants, all asking the same question: when will India be free? It was in this atmosphere that new leaders emerged. Among them was Mahatma Gandhi, who brought a new kind of strength, gentle, yet unshakable. He spoke of ahimsa, nonviolence, and showed that resistance need not come through weapons, but through courage of the spirit. His salt march, his spinning wheel, his quiet presence, all became symbols of a nation awakening. Through peaceful protests, boycotts, and fasting, millions joined him. Ordinary men and women discovered that even the smallest act, refusing foreign cloth, marching side by side, or standing firm in silence, could shake an empire. Of course, the journey was not without pain. There were clashes, hardships, and deep divisions, especially between different communities and religions. Yet the hope for freedom always returned, like the monsoon rains after a dry season. By the 1940s, the world itself had changed. The Second World War left Britain weakened, and India's voice could no longer be ignored. At last, in 1947, the dream became reality. India was free. The joy was immense, yet bittersweet, for freedom came with partition, dividing India and Pakistan, and bringing sorrow to many families. Still, as the tricolor flag rose for the first time, a new chapter began. India had endured centuries of change, empires rising and falling, rivers shifting, cities shining and crumbling. And now, at last, it could walk its own path. The clock struck midnight on August 15, 1947. As the world slept, India awoke to freedom. The air was filled with both celebration and silence, for while joy ran deep, the wounds of partition were fresh and heavy. Families were divided, cities changed overnight, and millions searched for new homes. Yet amid the sorrow, there was also hope for a future where India could finally shape its own destiny. In the early years of independence, leaders faced challenges greater than anyone could have imagined. A vast land of many languages, religions, and traditions now had to unite as one nation. Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, spoke gently of building a country rooted in democracy, equality, and progress. His words, filled with calm conviction, became a guiding light for the new republic. The task ahead was not simple. Cities were crowded with refugees searching for safety. Villages long forgotten under colonial rule needed schools, roads, and hospitals. The economy, drained by years of British control, had to be rebuilt from the ground up. And yet, there was a quiet determination. Farmers tilled the soil, teachers opened classrooms, and leaders worked to give India its first constitution. In 1950, that constitution was born. It promised justice, liberty, and dignity to all. For a nation of so many voices, it was like weaving a vast, colorful fabric, each thread unique, but together, creating a single design. The years that followed were filled with both struggle and growth. Dams were built to harness rivers, factories rose in new towns, and the Green Revolution slowly transformed farming. At the same time, India stayed true to a policy of peace, choosing not to take sides in the world's Cold War struggles, but instead to walk its own path. Life was not easy, but there was a sense of renewal, like the first rays of sunlight after a long night. The people of India carried with them the strength of centuries, and now, for the first time in generations, the freedom to decide their own future. The story of India, flowing gently through millennia of empires, kingdoms, colonial rule, and independence, reaches a new chapter in the mid-20th century, modern India. This is a story not only of politics and development, but of continuity, of the rhythms of daily life, of culture, faith, and the resilience of communities across the subcontinent. The dawn of modern India. In 1947, India gained independence, emerging as a sovereign nation after centuries of foreign rule. The land, its rivers, plains, forests, and mountains remained the same. Yet the governance, infrastructure, and social organization were now under the care of its own people. Cities and villages alike began adapting to new political, social, and economic systems. The new constitution, adopted in 1950, enshrined democracy, equality, and justice. This framework provided stability while honoring India's diversity. Citizens from every faith, language, and region became part of the larger national narrative. Yet their local traditions, festivals, and ways of life continued to thrive. Daily life and rural continuity. Life in villages retained its gentle rhythm. Farmers planted rice, wheat, and pulses according to the seasons, guided by the monsoon rains. Women prepared meals, children learned stories and skills from elders, and artisans continued centuries-old crafts, pottery, weaving, metalwork, and woodcraft, even as modern technologies such as electricity, roads, and mechanized tools arrived. The core of village life, its connection to the land, community, and natural cycles, remained intact. The sound of temple bells, calls to prayer, and the soft rustling of leaves by rivers continued to mark the passage of time. Urban life and modernization. Cities grew rapidly. Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Chennai, and Bangalore became centers of trade, education, industry, and culture. Modern infrastructure, railways, highways, airports, and telecommunications connected the nation more closely than ever. Universities and institutions encouraged research, innovation, and dialogue, while libraries, museums, and theaters preserved the rich heritage of India's past. Yet even in bustling urban life, cultural continuity endured. Festivals, rituals, and community gatherings remained central to social life. Markets continued to overflow with colors, spices, and crafts. Music and dance flourished, blending traditional forms with contemporary influences, creating a living tapestry of heritage and modernity. Preserving cultural heritage. India's heritage, its architecture, art, literature, and music, continued to flourish in modern times. The Taj Mahal, forts of Rajasthan, temples of South India, and palaces of Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh remained symbols of the nation's enduring creativity. Efforts to preserve monuments, restore historical sites, and document traditions ensured that history remained tangible and accessible to all. Classical music, dance forms like Bharatanatyam and Kathak, and folk traditions continued to thrive. Literature in regional languages celebrated both modern themes and the wisdom of the past. Artists, poets, and writers created works that reflected the rhythm of contemporary life while honoring centuries of tradition. Education and knowledge. Modern India emphasized education as a means of empowerment. Schools and universities expanded rapidly, offering knowledge in science, technology, arts, and humanities. Literacy rates increased, enabling more people to engage with history, philosophy, and literature. Libraries, digital archives, and cultural centers preserved the rich intellectual traditions of the past while fostering inquiry and innovation for the future. Spiritual learning continued alongside formal education. Temples, mosques, gurdwaras, and monasteries remained centers for reflection and community life. Festivals and rituals maintained the balance between material progress and spiritual continuity, reminding people of the values that shaped India across centuries. Economic growth and social development. Modern India's economy diversified, encompassing agriculture, industry, services, and technology. While cities grew rapidly, rural areas maintained traditional livelihoods alongside new opportunities. Markets, trade, and small industries ensured that communities remained connected, creating a dynamic balance between continuity and change. Social reforms, legal protections, and community initiatives addressed inequality, gender rights, and education. The government, civil society, and local communities collaborated to preserve culture while fostering development, ensuring that modernization did not erase the rich heritage of the nation. Celebrating diversity. India's strength lies in its diversity. Languages, religions, and regional traditions coexist, creating a mosaic of cultural richness. Festivals, whether Diwali, Eid, Christmas, Vaisakhi, or Holi, bring communities together in joy, reflection, and shared celebration. Culinary traditions, textiles, and handicrafts continue to reflect regional identities, while modern innovations integrate new ideas. Artisans maintain techniques passed down through generations, blending creativity with practicality. This harmonious coexistence of old and new forms the essence of modern India, the continuity of nature and life. Even as urbanization and technology shape modern India, the natural rhythms of life remain. Rivers flow, monsoons arrive with predictable grace, forests and wildlife continue their cycles, and the connection between people and the land endures. Farmers, herders, fishermen, and villagers remain attuned to these natural cycles, ensuring that life continues in gentle harmony. This connection to nature, combined with cultural heritage, provides a foundation for resilience, reflection, and continuity. It is a quiet but powerful reminder that India's story is not only written in politics and power, but in the steady rhythm of life itself. Closing reflection. As we conclude our journey through India's history, from the earliest civilizations to modern times, imagine standing at the edge of a serene river at dawn. Mist rises gently. The sun casts a warm glow across the fields. Children play in distant courtyards, and the scent of flowers mingles with the fresh morning air. Temple bells toll. A distant mosque calls to prayer, and birds sing in harmony with the flowing water. In this peaceful scene, we see the continuity of India, a land that has endured empires, kingdoms, invasions, colonization, and independence, yet retains the heartbeat of everyday life, the pulse of culture, and the rhythm of nature. Modern India carries forward the legacies of its past, weaving them into the vibrant, diverse, and resilient nation it is today.